Well, howdy everyone, and welcome to a brand new episode of the Lauren Muzyka Show, your favorite weekly update in the battle for life, family, and freedom. So excited to have you with me once again. And this week, it's another hot take. I'm your host, Lauren Muzyka, attorney and human rights advocate, and I serve as president CEO of Sidewalk Advocates for Life, the nation's largest peaceful sidewalk outreach organization. And we witness now over 23,000 mothers and babies saved from abortion. And I always get the question, how did you do that? Well, my short answer is through options and resources, peace, prayer, and love. That's really it. That's the most powerful stuff, right? So glory to God for that. And thank you all for your support. Now, this week, we're going to cover the fascinating landslide election we just had. Oh my goodness, what an election. And my quick thoughts on the future of America, especially in regards to life and family. Abortion referendums in 10 states. The cheat sheet is that 3 went pro-life, 7 went pro-abortion, and what it means in the abortion battle state by state going forward. And the Texas case of Nevaeh Crain and her unborn baby who tragically died at the end of October. And people saying that the Texas abortion ban was what caused her death. We're going to talk about why that's a lie, a bold-faced lie, and how we respond to our friends and neighbors who are saying this is why pro-life laws are dangerous. So hang tight with me. Here we go. Let's start with the first topic. So we have a new president, or I guess a recycled one, right? And what many are calling the greatest political comeback in U.S. history, former President Donald J. Trump, the 45th president of the United States of America, is once again President-elect Donald J. Trump and will serve as the 47th president of the United States, this time alongside a new vice president, Senator J.D. Vance of Ohio. Now, here's a fun fact. The last time a president skipped a term and returned to the White House, it was Grover Cleveland in 1893. He was the first Democrat elected after the Civil War, serving as our 22nd and 24th president between 1885 and 1889 and 1893 and 1897. So, history was made once again. But goodness, can we just all have a moment and recognize that this election cycle, it felt like at every turn, history was being made. First, we had President Joe Biden announcing on July 21st of this year that he was withdrawing his candidacy for a second term, writing via a signed letter on his Twitter, or now X, account, that this was, quote, in the best interests of my party and the country, while stating that he would continue serving as president until the conclusion of his term. He never quite came out and said, hey, I had a bad first debate performance with Trump, and it further confirmed that I'm fading mentally at my advanced age. You know, we were watching for months, if not a couple of years. We were seeing an ailing Biden stumble, get confused, and even trip and fall on camera, right? And the Democrats seemingly tried to pass it off on simply handing the torch to a new generation. And they suddenly anointed as their new candidate without any semblance of a party vote or delegates or anything, Vice President Kamala Harris. So I guess so much for the democratic process, right? Now, I don't know about you, but when she was finalized as their new candidate, my stomach dropped. I knew her to be the most pro-abortion, anti-life, anti-family values candidate we have ever seen in our country's history. She made her top issue abortion. She was clear, though she wouldn't say it directly, that she wanted abortion on demand through all 9 months of pregnancy and ideally with our taxpayer dollars. And she seemingly had no regard for common sense boundaries in women's locker rooms, women's sports, allowing biological men to be in very vulnerable spaces with young women. In summary, she ran on a platform of identity politics because honestly, it was hard to discern anything else that stood out about her vision and help for America, much less how she was going to turn around a dumpster fire of an economy under her administration that was seemingly crushing the working middle class. But it's clear America rejected her agenda this past Tuesday, and by a landslide. Less women, Hispanics, Latinos, Blacks, and other minority groups voted for her as opposed to Biden, and in many cases by double digits. Now, results are still coming in a couple states, but not only was Trump the decisive winner on Tuesday night, but it appears that he's going to win every single battleground state. Oh, and by the way, the popular vote too. So just the sheer vote number across the country, it looks like he's going to win that as well. I mean, wow. In short, America reelected a man who was almost assassinated twice, relentlessly sued, impeached, and labeled a Nazi, among other colorful things. Now, whatever your political persuasion, that kind of comeback is pretty amazing. He is one tough something. I still remember the day that Trump was holding a rally in Butler, Pennsylvania. I was actually doing laundry in the background, and I remember the moment he was almost assassinated. I was actually looking down, and all of a sudden I see commotion on the screen. I saw Trump grab his ear. He hit the ground. People behind him were confused, wondering what was going on, but they suddenly crouched down, right? Secret Service just rushes the stage. They pile on him, and like a phoenix from the ashes, Trump rises up, blood pouring down his face from his ear being grazed by a bullet, puts his fist in the air and starts to yell, "Fight, fight," right? And that was a moment that I realized that this guy does not give up so easily. And I think people felt like maybe in everything that they were going through, he was going to fight for them too. People wanted a change so badly, the GOP also won back control of the Senate by several seats and appears to retain control of the House of Representatives. It's the trifecta, as they call it. And it's a dream because Republicans can pretty much pass anything they want, at least until midterm elections. Now, I'm going to link this back to the life issue here in just a bit. I know that's why most of you come to the podcast. But I think it's important that we take a moment to note that this election, people said that their top three issues were the economy, inflation, and the border and immigration. Issues that they perceived to affect their safety and survival. Now, I do wish more people said that their top issue was a life issue, noting the death of 1 million preborn children every year in America alone. Because after all, without life, we literally have nothing. It's the one right from which all other rights flow, right? And this is, by any estimation, a modern day Holocaust that we have going on in our nation. But I think sometimes the reality of this loss of life and how it impacts us and our culture isn't always at the forefront of our minds every day. It's not always in our face, right? It's naturally easier to feel the impact of grocery prices or maybe how we're struggling to keep the lights on or how we're going to send our kids to college. And I so get that. It just shows me that we have more work to do. Now, don't get me wrong. I deeply care about my pocketbook too, right? It's just when I weigh all the issues out, I really can't say that I care more about gas prices than the death of 1 million innocent human beings every single year. I do feel lucky in that commonly when I'm voting for the most pro-life party each election, I'm usually voting for the party whose fiscal policies better the economy, in my humble opinion. Now, a Trump-Vance administration, professedly pro-life, still has made concessions on the life issue that bother many of us. There was a big discussion the last few months, like, oh my gosh, can you really vote for Trump-Vance as the so-called pro-life ticket, right? Because they sound moderate on some of this stuff. They regulate the abortion issue to a mere states' rights issue rather than a human rights issue. They're okay with abortion in the case of rape and incest. And again, that's a whole other show, right? A lot of people don't understand the compounded trauma that women face when they go through an abortion procedure after sexual assault, much less what it does to their children. And guys, I have friends who were conceived in rape, and I think of my friends Paula and Caleb and Ryan. I'm so glad that they're here. Again, that's a whole other show. We got to talk about that. They favor the IVF industry, which is pouring hundreds of thousands of human embryos down the drain every single year. And there's been a resistance to do something on a national level to protect innocent human life. Now, the good news is that they champion religious liberty. They have strong relationships in the pro-life movement. They favor robust pro-life state laws. They will nominate conservative justices to the bench, such as those that overturned Roe versus Wade. And guys, we're not going to have to deal with a weaponized FBI and DOJ looking for any reason to throw a pro-lifer in federal prison. Those are all wins. Those are big wins. So when I was headed into the voting booth, it was clear to me which administration was by far going to save more lives, even if it was also clear that we have more work to do in educating this party. In short, despite the imperfections, I really do think America is entering a golden age where the proper role of government can be restored. I'm somebody who tends to believe that less government is better, that the proper role of government is to protect us and our constitutional rights, to keep us safe, and to give the human family the means to flourish. I didn't need a mamala, as some people called Vice President Kamala Harris, and I surely didn't need the government telling me which pronouns I had to use. As former Planned Parenthood Director Abby Johnson said so well on her social media, people didn't vote for Trump because he was a perfect man, because, as the other side wanted to say, we somehow loved hatred and bigotry and we hated women, right? We voted for him to protect our children, to maybe close the border, for better gas prices, to protect the lives and spaces of women, and because we aren't threatened by strong masculine men. We're not at all saying that Trump is the perfect man, but we weren't voting for him as a person as much as we were voting on his policies and past job performance, on how he was going to pull us out of this hot mess. So I just invite us all to pray for a successful, blessed next 4 years for America. And I don't even have this in my script right now, but if you're somebody who's listening to this podcast who voted for Harris and Walz, and you are struggling, just know that you have my heart. And I really do hope that we can win you over too. Okay, abortion ballot referendums. Let's talk about that. Abortion was on the ballot in 10 states: Arizona, Colorado, Florida, Maryland, Missouri, Montana, Nebraska, Nevada, New York, and South Dakota. And here's the quick version. Florida, Nebraska, and South Dakota voted in favor of life, while the rest voted in favor of abortion, sadly. I still remember talking to my director of communications the day after the election, and she's like, "How are you feeling?" And I was like, "Look, I feel like the sky cleared, but there's a little rainstorm in the background," because I was just really grieved by the fact that 7 states voted in favor of a liberal abortion law in their state, right? In most cases, a yes vote was a vote for abortion until the point of birth. And the tragic thing is that common everyday voters had no idea that that's what the law was actually going to do. I can tell you as an attorney that the confusing language that the abortion lobby is putting on these ballots is leading many people of faith and conscience to vote in favor of abortion. They're being told that if you don't vote for this, women will die. They won't get emergency early delivery, ectopic pregnancy treatment, or miscarriage care. Again, this is a bold-faced lie, and these things are not abortions anyway. Emergency pregnancy care is allowed in all 50 states, regardless of the abortion law, because these things aren't abortions in medicine, in philosophy, in theology, and beyond. Or maybe a voter went in there and they had like an exception or two, right? Like maybe they're okay with abortion in a couple limited cases. Hope to win them over on that, but let's just say that that was the case. So I've heard of many people voting for all to get some, if that makes sense. In other words, it's a travesty that the abortion lobby is playing on people's emotions and leveraging their fears to get abortion on demand through all 9 months of pregnancy, commonly enshrined in their state constitution, something that most Americans would reject in an instant if they knew what they were really voting for. I mean, goodness, Missouri, a pro-life state, voted in a liberal abortion law because, again, people on the ground are telling us that voters are confused. We've got more work to do in educating our friends and neighbors on this language and winning them to life. And already, colleagues and I are talking about what a more proactive pro-life referendum would look like, allowing life to be protected in the state constitution. That's one option to fight back. At the very least, the good news is that this election, the abortion lobby realized that this strategy wouldn't be a slam dunk, as we had 3 states that pushed back the darkness. Thanks be to God. Okay, last topic. I got a ton of messages this past week on the Texas case of Nevaeh Crain and her unborn baby who died at the end of October, and people saying that the Texas abortion ban caused her death. They claim that doctors couldn't facilitate an emergency early delivery, for example, because of the law. In short, that is a lie, folks. Let's go ahead and unpack this. Nevaeh Crane was an 18-year-old woman who was happy to be pregnant. She was 6 months pregnant and wanted her baby. She fell ill and sought treatment at 3 different hospitals in Southeast Texas. At the first 2 hospitals, she was misdiagnosed with a mere strep and urinary tract infection, respectively, and dismissed despite signs of sepsis. The medical standard of care was reportedly not followed, and the doctor who discharged her when she was too weak to walk had a history of malpractice. Texas law does allow, like every other state, does allow for emergency early delivery. That is not an abortion. An abortion is the intentional killing of a preborn child, right? In this case, no one is intentionally killed. Sometimes you have to separate mother and child, right? Because both are at risk. But in this case, both are treated as patients, and the hope is to save both, right? A successful abortion is when you go in and directly take the life of a child and the child's dead. That's not the goal here. Sepsis is a real danger to patients, and more efforts have to be made to spot the signs earlier. But again, we've got a multitude of doctors now telling us that this woman and her baby could have been saved if they had not received substandard care. I want you to hear from one of our partners in the movement, Dr. Susan Bane of the American Association of Pro-Life OB-GYNs.
I'm Dr. Susan Bane. I'm a board-certified obstetrician and gynecologist, and I'm the chair of AAPLOG Action, the advocacy arm of the American Association of Pro-Life Obstetricians and Gynecologists. And I'm reading this article called "A Pregnant Teenager Died After Trying to Get Care in 3 Visits to Texas Emergency Rooms." Nevaeh Crain, who it says was about 6 months pregnant, did not have to die, neither did her baby. There is not a single law in this country during Roe, when we had Roe for the last 50 years, and for the last few years that we've had the Dobbs decision, that prevents the medical care that these 2 patients did not receive. Yeah, the articles, the medical experts here want to blame the laws, but shame on them. The laws aren't the problem. It is understanding the laws. So as we move forward as a pro-life movement, one of the key features is, where do you go for trusted information? AAPLOG is a medical voice for the pro-life movement. Join us, come to us, because we practice life-affirming Hippocratic medicine. That's what this patient needed. That's what the fetal patient also needed, her little baby that died. They both needed to be taken care of, and no law across this country wouldn't have allowed her urinary tract infection that had then become sepsis, where the infection spread throughout her body, to get the critical care she and her baby needed. The healthcare team has to take ownership of this. We are a highly regulated industry in healthcare. We have regulations changing all the time. We cannot use lack of understanding laws for the reason. And shame on the medical experts who gave advice on this and didn't say that. There was nothing to prevent these women from getting the care they need. So whether you're in the medical field or not, if you're part of the pro-life movement, make sure your voice is out there. Make sure you encourage healthcare professionals that are practicing life-affirming medicine, that you appreciate that they're practicing that way. And make sure as you speak, continue to speak for what you stand for, doing it in an emotionally intelligent way where we never attack people, but we present the facts out there. So please join AAPLOG, AAPLOG.org, to get information about how our pro-life movement can move forward and continue to protect both our maternal and fetal patients.
Okay, so let's go ahead and summarize. This woman died because of substandard medical care, not the Texas abortion ban. I'm going to walk you through this again. So Dr. Bane told us that at the first hospital, Nevaeh should have been monitored in the labor and delivery emergency room with the baby monitored. There was no care for her baby during this visit and no workup trying to determine the cause of her abdominal pain. Okay, so that's the first hospital. In the second hospital, they should have treated her signs of sepsis in the hospital. Delivery may not have been necessary at this point. They could make that decision after attention to the sepsis. At the third hospital, the baby was already dead on arrival to the hospital. They still needed to contain her infection and determine how to treat a stillborn delivery, D&E, or C-section. The first priority in that case is always stabilizing mom. You guys, bad doctors and bad information make me angry. This woman has become a pawn on the other side to push this pro-abortion agenda for abortion through all 9 months of pregnancy in any case. And it makes me sick. If you are getting people, and again, some of these folks, they may just not understand, right? So these are well-meaning folks in many cases, but if you're getting people in your life who are saying we need to overturn Texas's pro-life law because of Nevaeh's case, please, please get them this podcast, get them this information. All right. Well, with that, thank you again so much for joining me for another episode of the Lauren Muzyka Show. We'll be back here next Friday at 9 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Central on Facebook Live, YouTube, or wherever you get podcasts. Have a great week, everybody.